Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart. My oldest OCs, a pair named Starfin and Sandstone. I don't think I've ever talked about them before, as they truly are ancient. However, they're pretty special to me, so today I thought I'd go ahead and update their designs and rework their backstories. Most of my OCs don't actually have much of a backstory to them. These guys, however, when I was a very young child and a new artist, I actually tried to make a comic for them. Got a few pages in before I moved on to something else, of course, but they definitely had a story being worked out. I've drawn them a few times since then, some old art, and then more recently, some art fight refs. So today, we'll spiff up their designs and talk about their stories. So they're set in post-war Pyria, vaguely. Now, when I first came up with these guys, Book 7 wasn't out yet, and I don't think I'd read Book 6, so I was pretty much making it up as I went. The only thing I remember from the original stories are that they fought each other in a battle at some point, for some reason ended up in the Scorpion Den, and they're a couple. So it's pretty spotty. Anyways, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the shiny new backstories. Starfin was trained as a doctor, and enlisted as a field medic during the war. Although her main talent lies in helping dragons heal, she's no softie, and while she may technically be a non-combatant, she can take care of herself in a fight. She's rather short, even for a Sea-Wing, and she tends to be a slow swimmer, but Starfin has impressive stamina when she needs to. She's had plenty of practice going days without sleep in the aftermath of battles, doing triage with any other medics available. Starfin is generally a very sweet dragon, with good temper and a lot of empathy. At least until someone threatens one of her patients, or until one of her patients tries to move or fly too soon after their injury. Then she's a force to be reckoned with. After spending so long in the war, she travels everywhere now with a small medical kit, unable to stomach the idea of being caught off guard with no supplies. She served with the Sea-Wing Army for several years, and if she sometimes questioned their direction, she always knew she was doing her best to help her tribe, at least. However, sometime during the middle of the war, her sister Bluegill deserted, without telling anyone why she'd left. It happened right after the alliance between the Mudwings and Sea-Wings broke, and Starfin didn't see her sister again for a long time after that. Years later, however, near the end of the war, the unit Starfin was assigned to stumbled on a small group of dragons hiding in the Diamond Delta, between their two kingdoms. The group consisted of 2 Mudwing sibling units, several dragonettes, and 3 Sea-Wings who'd left the army, including, to Starfin's surprise, her own sister. Starfin found out that her sister had fallen in love with a Mudwing during their alliance, a bigwings named Mudslide, who she'd met during one of their last missions together. And in the time since then, they'd had 2 hybrid dragonettes. Before Starfin could try to reunite with her sister or meet her dragonettes, however, their group fled, after a brief but vicious confrontation with the Sea-Wing unit, none of whom appreciated knowing some of their own had left their tribe for another. After the incident, Starfin, finally able to understand why her sister had disappeared, and relieved to hear she had survived, began toying with the idea of following in her sister's footsteps, leaving the army to try and find her. Luckily, before she could desert and alienate herself from her tribe, the war ended, and suddenly Starfin was free to do as she wished. She left the Sea Kingdom and began the tedious process of tracking down her sister and the group she'd been with. It took her some months, but eventually Starfin found Bluegill, her mate, and their dragonettes. They had ended up in a small but growing city, nestled at the base of the southernmost mountains. The city, called Cliffside, was right next to the ocean, with the Sand Kingdom on one side and the rest of the Claws of the Clouds Mountains on the other. There, she was finally able to reunite with her sister, meet her 2 nieces, and make a new life for herself. Bluegill, working with some other dragons, had been establishing an orphanage for hybrid dragonettes. There were many hybrids whose parents abandoned them, either to avoid the social stigma or simply because they didn't want the responsibility of a dragonette who would never fit in. Bluegill, Mudslide, and others who'd made families even during the war, wanted to share their family and offer a home to those who'd been abandoned. Starfin was overwhelmed with pride in her sister's actions, and decided to stay with her, acting as the doctor for their orphanage and helping wherever else she was needed. It was there that she met Sandstone, who we'll be talking about next. Sandstone is a Sandwing Sea-Wing hybrid. He comes from an era when hybrids were less common, and subject to a lot more hatred. He's been moving around his entire life, hopping from one city to the next as he tried to stay ahead of the war and roving factions. However, during one of his stays in Possibility, he ran into Mudslide and a Skywing, who were trying to coax a young Sandwing Mudwing hybrid out of his hiding spot. Sandstone actually attacked first, assuming they were trying to hurt the dragonette. Luckily, before too much damage could be done, they managed to clear up the misunderstanding, and Sandstone helped them tempt the dragonette out. He ended up returning to the orphanage with them and stuck around, helping them to travel to other cities in search of dragonettes. His extensive knowledge of the nearby villages and towns was very helpful, and Sandstone finally found himself with a place to call home. Sandstone tends to be pretty cheerful, always quick with a joke to cheer up anyone who's upset. He's especially good with dragonettes of all kinds, always happy to spend time with them or listen to their stories. Although he can be slower to trust older dragons, he's had a good run ever since meeting Mudslide. Largely, he's just trying to get through life and help others out along the way. Aside from helping to find and save other dragonettes, Sandstone has also had to help defend the orphanage a few times. Unfortunately, although the war is over, most dragons still look down upon hybrids with disdain and even hatred, but Sandstone and the others are steadfast in defense of their own. As Sandstone began to integrate himself into the little hybrid community, he noticed in passing a few times a Seawing, Bluegill's sister. However, he found himself getting very well acquainted with her soon enough, in the aftermath of a trip gone wrong. He'd gone to the Scorpion Den with another dragon, after one of their scouts had reported a hybrid dragonette they'd seen. They'd arrived to find a small Sandwing Skywing and a Sandwing dragonette, both of whom were fiercely protective of the other, and basically attached at the hip. Sandstone and his partner had convinced them to come with them, and were leaving, when they were attacked by a trio of large Sandwings, who were claiming the dragonettes had stolen something of theirs. Sandstone and his group managed to escape, though not without injury, and after leaving the two dragonettes in someone else's care, he found himself landed in the clinic for a few weeks. To Starfin's eternal frustration, Sandstone turned out to be an abysmal patient, constantly trying to leave early or sneak away to visit the dragonettes, despite his injuries still bothering him. Sandstone, for his part, learned quickly just how deep Starfin would dig her heels in for an argument. Somehow they managed to make it through Sandstone's banishment to medical without any major mishaps, and, after that, Sandstone just kept coming back. At first, Starfin was exasperated by his attentions, but she grew to enjoy his company before long. The two of them grew close, enough that for a while Sandstone's flirting went right over Starfin's head, until her sister finally pulled her aside one day and explained in little tiny words that Sandstone liked her. And from there we end up with Starstone, my first and currently only OC ship, and something I'm still in love with even all these years later. Wow, that ended up being a lot different from the original, but it turned out pretty good. What do y'all think? Feel free to let me know if you enjoyed their backstory in the comments, or if you had any questions. Don't forget to check out the links in the description to see more art, and if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to see more like it. Thank you so much for watching, and please have a wonderful week.
I found a picture we took many years ago, when I said to you we would never grow old. Messages I've saved that I never send, cause I don't know you, but I used to back then. I remember that I was drunk out my mind when we kissed for the first time.